Okay, let's dive into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a true story of just absolute military resilience. We're talking total tactical isolation and sheer human willpower. It's November 18th, 1962, the Sino-Indian War. We are looking at the Battle of Rezang, a moment in history where a tiny, cut-off company of men was asked to do the literal impossible. So here's a question for you. What makes soldiers hold their ground when survival is mathematically impossible? I want you to just keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this. Because what we're about to see, it isn't just a dry breakdown of tactics or troop movements. No, we're taking an analytical look at a harrowing reality where every single tactical advantage went to the attacking force. And yet, against all odds, the defenders held the line. To really grasp the gravity of this, you just have to look at the monument that stands at Chushul today. It bears this incredibly powerful quote: "How can a man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods?" Man, that just sets such a solemn tone, doesn't it? It honors the ultimate sacrifice of the men of C Company 13 Kumaon. So let's break down exactly what those fearful odds actually were.
Section 1. The impossible odds.
Right. To understand this battle, we have to talk about the brutal geography. Rezang is this massive mountain pass on the southeastern approach to the Chushul Valley. And get this, the men were positioned at an average altitude of 16,000 feet. That environment alone is a deadly enemy. The men of 13 Kumaon, they were completely unacclimatized. They're fighting freezing, biting winds that made digging even basic defensive trenches a total nightmare. Up there, the air is so incredibly thin that it actually took hours just to boil a kettle of water, and whatever fresh rations they did have, literally frozen solid. But tactically speaking, here's the real kicker. They were entirely isolated and completely cut off from the protective comfort of Indian artillery. There was a mountain feature right in the way, meaning absolutely zero cover from the big guns. And this brilliantly illustrates the staggering mismatch in firepower. It's almost hard to believe. The Indian troops of C Company were armed with .303 bolt-action rifles, carrying maybe 600 rounds ahead. They had a grand total of exactly 6 light machine guns for the entire company, plus a few grenades and mortars. On the flip side, the attacking Chinese infantry rolled in with 7.62mm self-loading rifles, medium machine guns, heavy 120mm mortars, 132mm rockets, and 75mm recoilless guns, which, by the way, were specifically designed to blow up bunkers. So the Indian defenders were outgunned, outmanned, and totally without artillery support.
Section 2. Deployment at Rezang.
Take a look at this hand-drawn sketch of the Chushul subsector's tactical layout. It really highlights the sheer, terrifying isolation of Rezang. The distances between these Indian strongpoints were just vast. They were so far apart that the idea of providing mutual support to one another was virtually non-existent. 118. Just let that number sink in for a second. 118 men. That was the entirety of C Company, 13 Kumaon, under the command of Major Shaitan Singh. And they were tasked with holding this massive piece of terrain. We're talking 3,000 yards long and 2,000 yards wide, with 118 guys. So how do you even deploy 118 men over that kind of area? Well, Major Shaitan Singh had to split them into 3 platoons. Platoon 7, led by Subedar Surja, was placed 3,000 yards to the north. Platoon 9, under Subedar Ramachandra, held the center, and then Platoon 8 was pushed another 1,600 yards south, right in front of the company headquarters. Do the math on that? They were spread incredibly thin across a 2-kilometer frontage. It basically meant that if one platoon got hit, the others were literally too far away to actually do anything to help.
Section 3. The Chinese assault.
Okay, so as night falls on November 17th, the inevitable finally kicks off. Let's walk through this timeline. At 2200 hours, this severe snowstorm rolls in, just battering the area with gale force winds for 2 straight hours. And this storm, it was the perfect natural cover for the Chinese forces to creep up undetected. It isn't until 0200 hours, when visibility finally clears just a little bit, that an Indian listening post spots troops moving up the pass. Fast forward to 0400 hours, the Chinese launch a massive infantry assault right as light snow starts falling again. And then, at 0435 hours, the real nightmare drops. The Chinese open up with a devastatingly heavy artillery bombardment. It lasts for 20 minutes and scores direct hits on the Indian mortar positions. Section 4. Defensive response and counter. Now, despite getting hammered by artillery and facing just overwhelming numbers, C Company didn't just hunker down in their trenches. The tactical ingenuity and the sheer ferocity of their pushback was, honestly, it's incredible. Major Shaitan Singh saw this coming and warned his guys to watch their flanks. His commanders on the ground, guys like Subedar Surja and Nayak Sairam, showed absolute masterclasses in fire discipline. Picture this. A Chinese column is advancing carelessly, not using tactical cover. Nayak Sairam literally waits. He waits until they are in the perfect, most vulnerable spot before unleashing his light machine guns and grenades, just completely decimating the column. Thanks to that and some incredibly accurate counter-mortar fire, those initial frontal assaults were totally beaten back. And that brings us to this gripping micro-narrative. The Chinese realize, okay, frontal assaults aren't working, so they bring up a medium machine gun and start laying down heavy suppressive fire. Subedar Surja looks at Lance Naik Ram Singh and tasks him with taking it out. So Ram Singh and another soldier start working their way down the flank. They realize the only way to get to it is across open ground. So what do? They literally charge the last 70 yards directly into heavy fire, screaming their battle cry, Jada Shri Krishna Ki Jai. Ram Singh is firing from the hip the entire way. Tragically, he gets hit by a burst of fire and falls. Just 5 feet short of taking out that gun. 5 feet. Section 5. The Final Stand. By first light, the Chinese force realizes they can't easily steamroll the Kumanis, so they regroup for a methodical, overwhelming strike. As morning breaks at 06:55 hours, another massive artillery barrage rains down. The Indian troops manage to cut down the first 2 waves of attackers, but, ammunition eventually runs low. And when it does, they are forced into brutal hand-to-hand combat. Naik Chanjiram and others actually lead desperate bayonet charges just to try and stabilize the lines. But there were just too many of them. Subedar Surja reports over the radio that they are leaving their trenches to meet the assault head-on. By 800 hours, the Chinese fire a green flare into the sky. That was the signal. Platoons 7 and 8 had completely ceased to exist. What happens next is just the systematic collapse of whatever defenses were left. The Chinese literally bring up recoilless guns to blow apart the Indian bunkers at point-blank range. The communication wires are cut. It descends into this vicious, close-quarters brawl. Major Shaitan Singh, who had been actively leading, constantly repositioning his men while under intense fire, is fatally hit. Soldiers like Sepoini Hul Singh and Harful Singh are out there dueling enemy machine guns until they are physically incapable of holding their weapons anymore. When the smoke finally cleared, C Company's command structure was entirely wiped out. Section 6. Legacy of Leadership. The battle was over, but the reverberations of what happened up there at 16,000 feet, that would alter the entire course of the campaign. 109. Out of the 118 men deployed at Rezang, 109 laid down their lives in those freezing heights. 5 were captured, only 4 men managed to return alive. Every single man who died up there died a hero, fighting quite literally to the last man and the last round. Major Shaitan Singh was posthumously awarded the Paramveer Chakra, which is India's highest military decoration. And if we zoom out to look at the macro impact of this sacrifice, well, because C Company inflicted such massive casualties, with reports actually indicating the attackers suffered their worst losses of the entire war right here, the broader Chinese advance on the Chushul airfield was completely halted. They stopped them cold. This gave the Indian 114 Mountain Brigade the crucial time they needed to pull back to better tactical depth positions. Just a few days later, on November 21st, the Chinese announced a unilateral ceasefire. C Company, through their sacrifice, had completely broken the momentum of the offensive. So when analyzing an event like this, what should you take away from it? The tactical lessons are pretty stark. Right? We see the absolutely critical necessity of artillery fire support, of having secure communication lines, and the importance of proper logistical preparation for high-altitude warfare. But beyond the pure tactics, this battle is just a profound study in human morale and leadership. The fact that a vastly outnumbered, unacclimatized, and outgunned unit didn't just break and run, but actually engaged in coordinated counterattacks, it's just astounding. As we've seen today at Reason Law, battles are fought with weapons, but resistance is built by leadership. And it leaves us with this final thought. What absolute depth of leadership is required to inspire men to hold the line when the cold, hard math of warfare dictates that survival is utterly impossible?